The development of large military helicopters started in the 1930s in Germany, but the Luftwaffe's and the world's first helicopter squadron, Transportstaffel or Transport Squadron 40, was formed much later in the last month of the war. Transportstaffel 40 was ordered into existence in February of 1945, and the Luftwaffe High Command, which was finally convinced of the potential of the military helicopters, ordered the operational training program to be accelerated. But due to the chaotic situation in the spring of 1945, it was difficult for the squadron to effectively assemble its helicopters in one place, let alone set up an effective military unit. The squadron was mainly equipped with Focke-Achgelis Fa-223 Drache or Dragon helicopters, coming from the Berlin Tempelhof production line. The helicopter's top speed was about 180 km per hour. It could climb to an altitude of 7,000 meters and could transport cargo loads of over 1,000 kilograms. Its first flight was on the 3rd of August 1940. Although the Fa-223 is noted for being the first helicopter to attain production status, production of the helicopter was hampered by Allied bombing of the factory, and only approximately 20 were built during the war. It was proposed that the squadron would receive all the helicopters by the middle of 1945. But because of the worsening military situation, the unit never reached full strength. Certainly, it never received anything like the indicated number of Fa-223s. In early March of 1945, 6 pilots and 6 radio operators attended the training program. At the same time, a number of mechanics also received technical training from Focke-Achgelis. Little time was available for pilot training, but the unit did manage to build a device using cement blocks so that a primitive form of ground training was possible. The next month, April of 1945, was basically spent with collecting the available helicopters. In the early hours of the 20th of April, a small detachment of pilots and mechanics from the Transportstaffel 40 set out northwards to collect 2 additional Fa-223s from the production line in Berlin. Continuous raids over the German capital and heavy Soviet shelling prevented the intended completion of these helicopters, which were finally captured by the Red Army a few days later. On the 22nd of April, the detachment decided to return from Berlin. It was during the return flight that one of the Staffel's pilots was shot down, and he was later captured by US forces. Given the chaotic conditions, there was no opportunity for any new pilots to be trained on the Fa-223. On the 23rd of April, Captain Gerstenhauer, the most experienced copter pilot of the Luftwaffe, received orders that he would be required to perform support mission for the German mountain troops. However, in the last days of the war, the absence of any freight loading equipment made this mission impossible. Gerstenhauer sought to rectify the situation by acquiring the needed equipment from Focke-Achgelis facility. However, unknown to the pilot, the facility was in the process of being evacuated. On the 24th of April, Gerstenhauer set out by car for the facility to get the device. Upon reaching it, he was advised that a new Fa-223 was seen flying in the direction of Mittenwald. Gerstenhauer turned his attention to finding this new helicopter. He caught up with the pilot Karol Bode on the 25th of April. There, the two pilots met and discussed the future. Bode recalls instructing Gerstenhauer to make sure the helicopters did not fall into Allied hands and passed on the order to blow them up at all cost. Gerstenhauer disputes this order, recalling that he instructed Bode that he would return to try to organize their fuel supplies in order to provide support for the German mountain troops in the same area. Neither man would see each other again before the end of the hostilities. On the 27th of April, instructions were given by the Luftwaffe High Command that all available helicopters, along with a number of night fighters, were required to assemble into a liaison Staffel on airfields in Innsbruck in the southern Alpine areas in the defense of the Alpine stronghold. Since no infrastructure existed, there was no chance for a last stand to be put in place. In reality, there was nothing to be await to an end. The conditions were less than satisfactory. The airfield where the squadron relocated was built to support 600 people, but now housed some 2,500 men. Despite widespread looting, Transportstaffel 40's commander, Captain Stangl, was able to secure supplies for his men. One helicopter made a number of reconnaissance flights, trying to establish further landing sites and determining the extent of the Soviet army's advance. By the 7th of May, the Soviets were less than 20 miles away and orders were received to transfer westward to avoid capture. The mechanics with Stangl eventually reached Salzburg, where they surrendered to American troops. But the pilots and crew of the three remaining helicopters weighed their options. Capture and interrogation seemed inevitable. They felt they had only two choices: destroy their machines and try to get to their families by foot, or surrender to the Americans, where they felt their expertise with the helicopters would put them in a better negotiation position. Gerstenhauer and the pilots decided on the latter, and with their remaining fuel, fly their Fa-223s back to surrender to the US Army. The arrival of two large German helicopters on the 9th of May frightened the American troops, who unceremoniously hauled the pilots and their passengers out of their copters. So ended the saga of the world's first helicopter squadron, the Transportstaffel 40. But Gerstenhauer and the other pilots were to interest the Allies in their expertise and continued to work and fly their helicopters for the Allies after the war.